At the start of round 8 of the Tile Memorial, no less than 5 players were sharing the lead on 4 out of 7. And I'd like to look at one of those players in my play of the day. Alexander Morozevich, going into this game, had lost 2. So could he fight back? Could he reassert himself in the tournament? He was playing Luke McShane. Let's take a look. Morozevich with the white pieces. McShane has played a Chebanenko variation of the Slav. That involves advancing this pawn to b5 very early on. And frankly, I wasn't too impressed with the way Morozevich handled this opening, because now McShane seized the initiative. He took on c4. Now this is very good, because after knight b6 it's clear that this knight is going to gain a square on c4, which happened after c5, knight c4, and you can see this bishop is just the wrong side. It needs to be on f1, looking at this knight here, but well, it's not going to get there very quickly. So already I quite like black's position, but it's not a disaster for white, and I think if, for example, white played rook b1 here, taking the open file, then his position isn't too bad. Instead, Morozevich played bishop e1, which is a very uncompromising move, so preserving that bishop, but that breaks the communication between the major pieces on the back rank. And, well, it seems as though white has all the time in the world here. But after McShane's next move, a fantastic idea, it was clear that, yeah, he was really seizing the initiative. This is a great move, king h8. Suddenly, after rook g8, it's clear he's going to open the king side and get an attack. And the thing is, in that situation, the rook looks really bad on f1 because it can't move. And that means the king doesn't have an easy escape square. If the king could escape to the middle, things wouldn't be so bad. But there's a real traffic jam here, and that's a problem for white, as we'll see. Okay, Morozevich played queen to f3. Okay, bring the queen over seems to make sense to protect the king. But g4 is an excellent move. Okay, after this, so the g file is open, but there's also a threat to use the h file for the queen. If we can get the queen over, then the king is in terrible trouble. For example, let me see, if white just plays a nothing move, then yeah, queen to h6, already this is absolutely fatal. And there are other ideas here of playing also bishop to h4 to hit the knight on g3. And you also can't move the f pawn because the e3 pawn is under attack from these knights. So this is already difficult. But rook c1, I thought this was a good counter-attacking move from Morozevich. Sometimes he just wants to take this knight off, take on c6, and maybe bring his bishop to this diagonal to attack black's king. So an interesting idea. But McShane was very cool. He played queen f8, okay, threatening to bring the queen over. So, for example, if rook takes c4, queen h6 immediately is decisive, threatening queen h2 mate. So Morozevich played instead after this bishop h3 to attack the knight. And at first I thought, well, maybe f5, but then you take and take on c6. And the e6 pawn is weak. Maybe you can play bishop c3. This isn't so clear. But after bishop h3, McShane played very well. Knight f6, excellent move. At first I looked at this and thought, well, black is retreating. But actually it's much sounder to keep the pawn on f7. Also, you threaten to bring the knight into e4. And, you know, if white attempts this kind of sacrifice now, it's just not as effective when this pawn is well supported. So, for example, the queen can come out to h6 and black continues his attack. And white is suffering here. Threat to play knight e4. So obviously the king wants to get out of the g file. So he played king h2. Rook b8. What an excellent move. So, you know, while white is distracted on the king side, suddenly black seizes the b file. An excellent idea. And of course with the bishop being on e1, white cannot challenge with rook b1 himself. So this is a really good idea. Now you might think that, well, there's no real connection between the two sides, but just wait. This rook can really do some damage once it comes to b2, as we'll see very soon. e4 played. This is already a very difficult position for white. And now a fantastic move from McShane. He simply sacked the exchange on g3. I think the danger is if he leaves this too long, then this sacrifice followed by bishop c3 could pay dividends for white once that pawn is on e4, cutting out black's pieces. So I think this was exactly the right moment for this sacrifice. Now queen takes will be met by knight takes e4. This is already very dangerous. You can see those beautiful knights. Very nice indeed, and black still has the initiative on the king side. So pawn takes at least straightens out the pawns, but watch the king, it's opening up. Pawn takes pawn. And this queen is quite limited. For example, if queen e2, then rook b2 is already very strong. Rook c2 is forced, and now knight e3 wins back the exchange. So instead of this, after pawn takes, white played queen c3, which looks reasonable, but okay, here I thought queen h6 was actually a very strong move, because the knight cannot be taken. There are all kinds of funny tactics here. Knight g4, and well, if the king had come to g2, knight e3 would have been deadly, and here this is probably winning for black. Okay, white doesn't have to do that, but still I think queen h6 was a pretty strong option. Instead, McShane played knight b2. Okay, also very dangerous, threatening to spin the knight into d3, and white has to be really on his toes. And of course, both players were running very short of time, as both of them are wont to do. Knight c4. Okay, this is all reasonable. And now the knight spun into e3, and now white should have played rook f2, and I think if Morozevich had done this, he would have had chances to defend. This is still very double-edged. This protects the king along the second rank. You know, maybe there are threats to take on a6. Black still has the initiative. Maybe bishop f6 is a good move to take here, but this is in the balance. Instead, rook h1 was played. Now, this is hoping that he's going to be able to counter-attack on the h-file, but this was just a pipe dream. Bishop f6, excellent move. And after bishop g2, McShane took on d4, and now Morozevich was obviously hoping to get a counter-attack here. You know, maybe using the queen as well. But knight f4 shattered his dreams. This is a brilliant move. If the queen moves away from protecting g4, that is checkmate straight away. If the queen moves to f3, this is also mate, forced after knight g4. If the queen takes, then queen b2 comes in, and that's the end. Once again, problems on the b file. Rook b1 should have been played a long time ago. So after knight f4, white has to take, but now the queen comes in, recaptures the piece. Black is only the exchange down and has 3 pawns. So even on material, black is winning, but just look at those active pieces and the exposed king. White is completely lost here. There's a threat to play knight g4 check, winning the queen. So Morozevich tried rook e1, protecting the queen, but now queen f5, very good move. Stepping out of the pin, and maybe he just wants to play queen g5 and queen h6 to hassle the king. I think white is just lost here. Morozevich tried bishop d6. McShane, short of time, repeated the position a couple of times and then played e5. Very good move, supporting the bishop, locking out White's bishop. So now the king really is in desperate trouble. And after these moves, Morozevich actually resigned here. They'd reached the time control, and it's clear that mate is forced. Let's just take a look at a couple of variations. King g3, and now knight f5. If the king steps forward, then, well, let's play queen h4. That's the flashy move, and this wins. And instead of king g4, if you play king g2, we check, and well, we can force the king into the corner, and that's mate. So it's forced mate after move 40. Wonderful game from Luke McShane, who's really entertained us in this tournament, and he is now back up to 50%. He has 4 out of 8 going into the final round. Caruana beat Kramnik in today's round, so he leads on 5 out of 8, with Redyabov and Carlsen on 4.5. So it's going to be a tremendous last round. Don't miss it, and I'll give you another summary at the end of the tournament.